Good afternoon, Mr. Vice President, and thank you for this opportunity to make my second budget debate contribution. Mr. Vice President, I would like to start off my contribution by congratulating the Leader of the Opposition for her contribution in the other place. And notwithstanding what may be said here, Mr. Vice President, the powerful contribution of the Leader of the Opposition in reply to the Minister of Finance caused the government to pull out the member for St. Anne's West, Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West, pull him out to sing the mantra of the PNM in answer to the political leader. Such was the fear in the PNM with respect to the delivery of the Leader of the Opposition. The political acolyte, I call him, the member for Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West. But I'll get back to him. I want to congratulate, Mr. Vice President, all of the members of the opposition for their contribution in the other place. And I would like to also, before getting into the meat of my contribution, to thank Senator Sturge, Senator Solomon, and Senator Samuel for their contribution and their public duty that they have done to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I would also like to congratulate Senator Haynes, Senator Hussain, and Senator Obika for their appointments to the Senate and for the brilliant contributions that they have made thus far. They have justified the appointments and the decision of the political leader to have them here in this august chamber. Mr. Vice President, through you, I would like to inform the Minister of Works and Transport and the Minister in the Ministry of National Security that over the last week, the people of Trinidad and Tobago have been suffering because of the flooding that has taken place. And on saying that, I say that with a heavy heart because today, one would have expected that when the population woke up to the news that Dave bails out, the person who was appointed by the Prime Minister and the People's National Movement to look after the people of Trinidad and Tobago in times of disaster has bailed out, one would have expected that a responsible and caring government would have come today and the Minister in the Ministry of National Security would have given the people of this country some kind of assurance that those who are suffering would get some kind of help from the government. You see, out of every disaster comes some good. Out of every single disaster comes some good. Because over the last week, the people of Trinidad and Tobago have seen the difference between an absentee Prime Minister and a real Prime Minister. And it is not the first time. Because you know, Mr. Vice President, the great American author Maya Angelou has a saying, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. And the Honorable Prime Minister has shown us over and over who he is. And it is time after 2 years for us to believe him. Can you imagine that over the past week, there are people in this country who do not have water. They don't have food. They are stranded. Their homes have been flooded out. And not a word from the Minister in the Ministry of National Security. You know why? Because who wrote the speech didn't put it in. That's why. That is exactly why. So today, I want to congratulate again, with no reservation, the Leader of the Opposition for going out in every single flooded area, from Suchet Trace, Siparia, Pinal, El Carmen, El Socorro, and to give relief to those people. You know why? I have it written down here. The last speaker, the Minister of Work, said that the people of Toco are also people of Trinidad and Tobago. Well, let me tell you, the people of Woodland are also people of Trinidad and Tobago. The people of El Carmen are also people of Trinidad and Tobago. The people of Caparo are also people of Trinidad and Tobago. But you see, this government has a way. Everything that goes south, it don't belong to Trinidad and Tobago. That's how it is. Everything that's south, that goes south, don't worry about that. Yes, the people of Mafikin, when the Prime Minister decided that he will leave the diplomatic center and go up to Mafikin and Sandy Grande, the Member of Parliament for Sandy Grande couldn't even take the Prime Minister to where the flooding was. That's to tell you the kind of MP they have. She didn't know that the Member for Parliament for Sandy Grande didn't know that Vega de Oropuch is part of Sandy Grande. They are people too of Trinidad and Tobago. So when you want to be a Prime Minister, you must be a Prime Minister of all of Trinidad and all of Tobago. That is what the people between 2010 and 2015 became accustomed to, and that is what they will become accustomed to very soon yet again. Can you imagine that there are people in this country today whose homes are flooded out? They don't have a fridge, they don't have a stove. And you know what the PNM is posting today? That the PNM, not a minister will go into one of those areas. Not one, save and except the Minister for Local Government. Not one of them will go. No, I will tell you where you went. Not one of them will go. But you know what they're concerned about and what the priorities of the People's National Movement is? I'll tell you what it is. Post-budget public meeting, Friday, 27th August, San Fernando City Hall Auditorium, 7:30. Where we are, the road ahead, the Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, Mr. Stuart Young, and Mr. Edmund Dillon. Edmund Dillon cannot go into a constituency and provide a bottle of water to somebody who doesn't have water and who's been flooded out. He doesn't know about Suchet Trace. He don't know about El Carmen. He don't know about El Socorro. But what do you know about? Organized meeting. This is the most uncaring and the worst government that this country has ever seen. You cannot do that to the people of this country. You cannot do that. It is wrong. It is absolutely wrong. $50 billion we've come here to debate, and there are over 50,000 people affected by flooding, and the government of the day cannot help one of them. I put on public record today without apology that I congratulate Ian Allen. Ian Allen has single-handedly done more than the entire government put together. Single-handedly. Single-handedly. Three ministers of national security. You appoint a man to the ODPM, and because the Prime Minister says he must go, he resigns now. That is an appointment made by the Prime Minister. He must take responsibility. It is time for people in this country to take responsibility for what they are responsible for. Dave Williams wasn't appointed by the UNC. Stephen Ramrup had the ODPM running like oil. Look at what we've come to today. Look at what we've come to today. I want to go back to the contribution of the member, my good friend, the Minister of Agriculture. The Minister of Agriculture told us yesterday in his contribution that when he passes down to Couva and he sees the circles, he's get upset. You know what I learned from the Minister of Agriculture's contribution? That he travels on the road left to go to Rio Claro and Mayaro. He turns off at Couva, Grand Couva Road. He's take that to reach Mayaro. You know why I know that? I'll tell you why, Mr. Vice President. Because since it was so upsetting for him to hear about the $29 million that was spent at the Couva interchange, if he had gone a little bit more south, as he break the corner by Gasparillo and he look on the right, you know what he'd have seen? He'd have seen 300 million standing up there. 300 million stand, iron and steel, iron. The headquarters for Petrotrin. 300 million. Let them say the UNC spent that. If he had looked a little bit beyond that, you know what he'd have seen? He'd have seen WGTL, 3 billion. not 300 million, 3 billion. So I have it here. You know what he said? He said 236, he could have gotten 236 kilometers of road with the 109 million he has to pay back. I wanted to check how much road you could get with the 300 million that was spent on the Petrotrin. Because you know why? The PNM has a habit of coming to this parliament and telling us we must understand how we reach here. And I agree. But we didn't reach here from 2010 to 2015. There was a hit. You know that Trinidad existed before that. And the PNM existed before 2010. So when he comes to talk about the 29 million that was spent at Presal in Cuba, let him go a little bit south. And as you pass Gasparilla and you're going down, on the left-hand side, you will see the 1 billion that was spent on the Brian Lara Stadium. The 1 billion in overruns. Tell me how a project could move from 200 million to 1.2 billion under the PNM. But that is PNM. That is delivery PNM style. I wonder how much roads could have been paved with the 1 billion that was spent in cost overruns on the Brian Lara Promenade. On the Brian Lara Stadium. 1 billion, 300 million, 3 billion on GTL. When you go back, the Minister of Energy spent about 5 minutes on Petrotrin. And it is absolutely amazing that we sit here and listen that Petrotrin has an 800 million bullet payment to be made in 2019. How did that happen? Under the UNC? Yeah, it happened under Lindsay Gillette. That is how much they know about what happened at Petrotrin. That's why you could say that. And that's why the population of Trinidad must know that in the crosstalk, the Minister of Trade said that the Children's Hospital is just a building. That is what it is for the PNM. It's just a building. But you see, to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, the Children's Hospital is a facility where poor people could go and get delivery of health care that they can't get anywhere else. To the PNM is a building, and it will remain a building. But the United National Congress will open it. They bill it, and they will open it. I must say, Madam President, I was a little bit disappointed with the contribution of my friend, the Minister of Agriculture. Because of many of the members on that side, I respect his intelligence. He always has an intelligent contribution to make. And I was a bit disappointed because he went back to the mantra of the political acolyte about this company called NGC. So I want to deal with NGC. I want to deal with what happened at NGC. Because the PNM has said over and over that this, yeah, I want to deal with it. I want to deal with it. I want to deal with it because I have the facts. The National Gas Company is one of the jewels of Trinidad and Tobago. It is one. And the PNM has carried this mantra from before 2015 that the United National Congress between 2010 and 2015 took out $16 billion from the NGC. Well, before I get to how much was taken out, Madam President, I don't apologize for the money that was spent between 2010 and 2015 that was taken from the National Gas Company. I want to remind the members on that side that when that money was taken out of the National Gas Corporation, that money was used on the people of Trinidad and Tobago. It didn't escape like the other PNM projects. That money was the same money that was used to build a health center in Diego Martin West, in the constituency of the Prime Minister, that the people of Diego Martin were suffering for years. That is the same money that was used by the People's Partnership to build 2 schools in Diego Martin West that wasn't built by the PNM in 39 years. That was the same money that was used to fund the GATE program because the People's Partnership understood the investment. They spoke about, I'm surprised that the Minister of Agriculture would have criticized the fact that the People's Partnership spent money on the children of this country. On the children of this country? Madam President, I'm surprised, to say the least, about this issue about NGC. And I'll tell you why. Let me start off by saying that the myth that the People's Partnership took out $16 billion from the NGC is exactly that. It is a myth. It is propaganda by the PNM and fueled by the PNM. Because we took out $12.7 billion from the NGC in 5 years. But I want them to stay quiet and listen, because in 4 months, the PNM took out $3.6 billion from the NGC. You want to talk? In 4 months, the PNM took out $3.6 billion from the NGC. Right? Let me tell you how they took it out. Let me tell you how they took it out, because they like propaganda. Listen, on the 16th of September 2015, they took out $493 million. On the 29th of October 2015, they got the proceeds of the IPO. That was $1.514 billion. On the 25th of November, they took out $175 million. On the 27th of November, 2 days later, they took out $500 million. On the 11th of December, they took out $501 million. And on the 29th of December 2015, they took out $501 million. $3.684 billion in 4 months. You want to talk about the People's Partnership taking out $12 billion in 5 years. You took out $3.6484 billion in 4 months. And let me tell you why. Let me tell you how the PNM is, Madam President. You know how the PNM is. The minister in the ministry of the office, the minister in the office of the Prime Minister, the minister in the office of the Attorney General will stand in Parliament and will tell this country that $16 billion was taken out. So and he didn't understand that the People's Partnership wasn't in power after September 2015. A minister who is holding ministerial portfolio in the office of the Prime Minister, the minister who is holding ministerial portfolio in the office of the Attorney General cannot read a financial statement. That is what you offer us as change? That is what you offer us? That is what you will tell the people of this country? But you see, the PNM know how to run propaganda. I'll tell you why. They are quick to talk about NGC and the money that was taken out of NGC. There's another jewel of Trinidad and Tobago that belongs to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. It's called TGU. But you wouldn't hear the PNM talk about TGU. You know why? You know why, Madam Vice President? There are two issues about TGU. TGU was conceptualized under the late former Prime Minister Patrick Manning. It was completed under the People's Partnership and opened in 2013. TGU is the most, or one of the most efficient electricity generation companies in the Western Hemisphere. When it was completed by Man Forestal, the Germans told the people of Trinidad and Tobago they couldn't run TGU. They needed a foreign firm to run it. Today, TGU is run totally by people that belong, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Today, as we speak, they are quick to talk about NGC and how much money was taken out of NGC. Madam President, let me tell you what this PNM government has done to TGU, a jewel that belongs to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Let me tell you what they have done, Madam President. In September of 2015, the PNM government took out $222 million from TGU. In December of 2015, they took out $55 million out of TGU. In the same month of December of 2015, the PNM government made TGU take a loan, a bond, for $600 million to pay back the government. $600 million. And in June of 2017, they took $20 million from TGU. In 2 years, the PNM has taken $6.1 billion from TGU. And they want to talk about NGC. The NGC money was the government owned too. That's why we was using it. So don't complain about NGC and then come and sing a story about TGU. NGC belongs to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. TGU belongs to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. But the problem with that statement by the Minister of Energy is a very simple one. Yes, it's the government's money. The companies, the peoples of Trinidad and Tobago, it belongs to us, right? So don't be making any backdoor deal. Don't be making any deal to sell it. Because, Madam President, in 2016-2017, the Minister of Finance announced in his budget presentation 2016-2017, and I quote, the sale of 20% of Trinidad Generation Unlimited TGU will be sold to institutional investors such as National Insurance Board and the Trinidad and Tobago Unit Trust Corporation. This measure is expected to generate $600 million. That was in 2016-2017. In the midterm review, 6 months later, that went up. They proposed we proposed that a new shareholder will hold up to 40% of the shareholding in the company, with another 10% offered to public and or institutional investors. But the $600 million that was for 20% has now grown to $3 billion for 40%. But you see, the plot thickens with this TGU. Because while the minister in the midterm review was telling the country that the cabinet was going to sell 40% of TGU, on the 25th of May 2017, on the 25th, Madam President, it is very important, the dates, the 25th of May 2017, this cabinet, led by this Prime Minister, made a decision that the Ministry of Finance and the Union Estate Electricity Generation Limited will, with appropriate consultants, manage the sale of Trinidad Generation Unlimited, the plant, to Forestal, 40% of TGU, with another 10% offered to the public and private institutional investors. That was on the 25th of May. Cabinet decided to sell 40% to Forestal. All relevant consultancies be engaged by the Union Estate Generation Company Limited on behalf of the Ministry of Finance, with costs to be on a reimbursable basis. Madam President, I want to ask the question, how is it that the Cabinet, by Cabinet Minute number 922 of May 25th, 2017, could decide to sell 40% of TGU to Ferrostal, the company that built it? In May, the Cabinet decided that. But on the 9th of June, on the 25th of May, Cabinet decided to sell it. On the 9th of June, the Prime Minister was asked, would the Prime Minister say whether government has reached an agreement to divest 40% of Trinidad Generation Unlimited to a private sector investor? More than a week later, after the Cabinet decision. And you know what the response of the Prime Minister was, Madam President? What the response of the Prime Minister was, after the Cabinet already agreed to sell. Madam Speaker, the Minister of Finance in his capacity as corporation sole is currently exploring the divestment of 40% of TGU, and there is no agreement at this time. The process is the widest process, having indicated in the national budget a public expression that we are interested in receiving from interested parties, and we are prepared to divest. We are considering offers. We are inviting persons who may be interested, international companies that are working in Trinidad and Tobago in the area. We are looking at the broadest spectrum, and the Cabinet will determine, based on the offers, what is the best option for the government of Trinidad and Tobago. This is the reason why people don't trust the government and the Prime Minister. Because when questions are asked and the answers are given and the facts are revealed, you realize why you cannot trust this government. That sale of TGU, if it goes through, will be challenged at every single stage. I put the government on notice. This government will not be allowed to sell out the assets of this country like this. Those assets, Madam President, they don't belong to the PNM. They belong to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And when they are lost forever, Madam President. And I say that, Madam President, with a heavy heart. You know why? Because one of the other jewels of Trinidad and Tobago was MHTL. MHTL, that was created by Dr. Kirsten Coombs, was one of the jewels of this country. And you know why this country doesn't have it today? You know why? Because one of the advisors to the government today was the governor of the central bank. And they allowed CL Financial to play with it like a toy. And today, the people of Trinidad and Tobago have lost MHTL. It was one of the greatest energy investments. MHTL, Atlantic LNG, Point Lisas, and TGU. Those were the jewels of our country. And that advisor that you have today is responsible for it.
Is that Ewan Williams?
And they wouldn't release the report. They wouldn't release the report and let the people of this country see what was going on and what the central bank was doing while CL Financial was playing with the people's money that belonged to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam President, I want to move on to the Ministry of the Attorney General. And I want to refer to the contribution, and I will explain to you, Madam President, why this country finds itself in the position that it finds itself in today. We warned this country in 2015 that if you elect the PNM, you will elect a government that is incompetent and incapable of running this country. And in the past 2 years, we have seen that unfold before the eyes, and that is why the people of this country are suffering today. The Attorney General, Madam President, the Attorney General is constitutionally mandated to be the legal advisor to the Cabinet and to the government of this country. I wouldn't have enough time today to outline all of the missteps that we have had between 2015 and now by the Attorney General. But I want to highlight one in particular. And you know why I highlighted, Madam President? I highlighted because there was a law student picked it up. And I'll tell you why it is embarrassing to this country. Why it is embarrassing to the government. When the Member of Parliament for St. Augustine was making his contribution in the other place, one of the things that he pointed out was that it is wrong for the government to bring legislation to the Parliament that requires a special majority and take out the special majority requirement. And it is something that the opposition has complained about. The Member for St. Augustine was making a very valid point, Madam President. Madam President, it is inexplicable and unbelievable that in the Attorney General's contribution, to the appropriation bill in the other place, I want to tell you and read out to you, Madam President, exactly what the Attorney General said. Because I want to demonstrate to the people of Trinidad and Tobago the kind of people that hold public office in this government. This is the Attorney General on the 12th of October, 2017. The member for St. Augustine yesterday spoke about the Attorney General being tactical and bringing bad law and saying that 3/5 majority were required on bills. And I asked in crosstalk yesterday to my learned colleague, well, if you have a complaint of that nature, why don't you go to court? And his response was it was too expensive to go to court. And listen to what the Attorney General said, Madam President. I would like to inform the honourable member that in matters of a constitutional nature, where you can go and there is no prescriptive amount, that the maximum exposure in costs that you are facing is 14,000. That is certainly not a far stretch, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I can't stand here and allow an Attorney General to make that kind of statement on the Hansard. Tell the people of this country that the Attorney General, Madam President, is responsible for all of the litigation that is brought against the state of Trinidad and Tobago. All. The civil litigation is brought in his name, eo nomine, under the State Liability and Proceedings Act. And you are telling me that an Attorney General will tell the country this, knowing fully well that when you file a constitutional motion or you file a judicial review, that the costs that you are liable for are hundreds of thousands of dollars? That is what you will do? I'll put on the Hansard to correct the Attorney General, because you know what it shows? You have an Attorney General who doesn't know what the law is. That is what it is. And I make no apology for saying that.
Senator Ramdeen, please take your seat. I just want to remind you about the standing orders, about members of Parliament, fellow members, okay? And how you approach what you're saying, okay?
Madam President, the Attorney General said in his contribution that the exposure in costs to someone who brings a judicial review or a constitutional motion is $14,000. That was the Attorney General. The Court of Appeal of Trinidad and Tobago, which is the highest court of the Supreme Court in Trinidad and Tobago, in Civil Appeal number 75 of 2013, a quorum of Mendonça, Jamada, and Barrow Justices of Appeal have said otherwise. So let me read into the Hansard what they have said. In this context, common sense dictates that the stated approach to costs should be so. Indeed, it is eminently rational. Constitutional and judicial review actions are unique, not only in nature, but also because in terms of quantification of costs, it is virtually impossible to apply standardized criteria based on the value of a claim. What is the value of a breach of a fundamental right? What value does one place on striking down legislation as not reasonably justifiable in a democratic society? And this is it, Madam President. Fixed or prescribed costs are simply not apt. The very nature of these kinds of actions, which can include significant public interest litigation, includes challenges to legislation and executive action and redress for human rights infractions, justly demand case-by-case customized cost assessments. So I've read what the Court of Appeal has said, and I make no apology for saying that what the Attorney General said in his contribution was wrong and was incorrect and does not accord with what the law of Trinidad and Tobago is. But it goes a little further than that, Madam President, and that's why it bothers me. Because I was looking at the parliamentary channel when the Honorable Attorney General was making his contribution. And while it can be forgivable that not everybody will read every judgment and know what the law is, what is unforgivable, Madam President, is that you will quote things that you know are incorrect. And why I say that, Madam President?
See, please. You remember what I just told you? So whatever you're presenting, you should know by this stage how to present it, okay?
The Attorney General told the Parliament that the Attorney General and Ministry of Legal Affairs budget under this was, I'll tell you what he said, I'll quote it. The appropriation now before us for the two ministries, Attorney General and Legal Affairs, is $263 million. Let me tell you what the documents that were presented to us by the Ministry of Finance, which was approved by the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance before it came here in Cabinet, said. The Attorney General said the budget was $263 million. The 2018 estimates show that the budget of the Attorney General was $286 million. That's a mere $23 million more. It mightn't be much for them. It's a lot for us. In 2 years, the Ministry of the Attorney General has spent $341 million actual expenditure in 2017. $302 million, and they come in to spend $286 million. What value have the people of Trinidad and Tobago gotten for over $1 billion outside? Sorry, not $1 billion, 336, 800, over $800 million spent on the Office of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs. And you know, they have an obsession with figures. Because the Attorney General has a way of, he said, we saw in the last government there was $444 million in legal fees spent on the Attorney General's office. In fact, listen to this. In fact, this is the Hansard, you know. I am able to report today that we have spent 10 million on local attorneys, and we have cleared 38 million to the DPP's office. As the Attorney General. So since the Attorney General said that, let me quote the figures from the documents that were approved by the Cabinet, led by the Prime Minister, of which the Attorney General is a member, the second highest member that approved these figures. And let me, 10 million on local attorneys, 38 million on the DPP's office. The 2016 figures show, I'm obliged. The 2016 figures show that the Ministry of the Attorney General spent 86 million. 86 million. In any parliament, you spent 10 and 38. You spent 86 million. 50 million in 2016. And you know what is disturbing about it? Is that in the paragraph later on, he tells the country that we as a government have spent 8% of what my predecessor spent. Can you believe this? Can you believe this? This is on the Hansard. This is the respect that you have for the people. Have some more respect for the intelligence of the people of this country. Madam President, before I close, there is one issue I want to deal with. Today on the Express newspaper, it's hard. The child who has won the President Gold Medal in this country last year, who topped the Caribbean in every subject that she wrote, who lives in Ramguli Trace in Cunupia, whose house is flooded out, who went to study at the University of Toronto, not in law or medicine. She went to study forensic science because she understood the need that our country has for those people. Today, Priya Maharaj has to sue the state to pay, you know what? Her tuition, her clothes, her warm clothing allowance, her warm clothing allowance, her book allowance. After 50 billion you spent last year, a child who topped this country has to tell the government that I will sue you to get what she's entitled to, the President Gold Medal winner. Madam President, there is nothing else that needs to be said about this government. Nothing. You see, Madam President, we want to change the paradigm too. We really want to change the paradigm. And you know why we want to change the paradigm, Madam President? We want to change the paradigm, and we will change the paradigm. I'll tell you why. We want to change from a Prime Minister that disrespects our women to one that sees our mothers, grandmothers, daughters, and sisters as the matriarchs of our country. That is what they are. We want to change from a government that promises performance to a government that delivers on its promises. We want to change from a government of anger, insults, and arrogance to a government that listens, cares, and comforts the people. We want to change from a government that is incompetent, visionless, and leaderless to a government that provides a path so that all Trinidadians and Tobagonians will understand that they have a future in Trinidad and Tobago, and we can take Trinidad and Tobago back to the paradise that we know it to be. And it's very easy to accomplish all of those things, Madam President. All we have to do is put those here, and we will go there, and that is how it will be accomplished. I thank you, Madam President.